OK, let's start then with that famous night for Newcastle United as they thrashed Paris Saint-Germain by 4-1 in the Champions League. Sam, Wallace and David Ornstein. Sam, I want to start with you. We'll start with your paper in the Telegraph. Look, they've waited 20 years to have Champions League football at St James's Park, haven't they? Been worth the wait, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was a monumental night for them. Clearly, it's not just a return to the Champions League. They're playing against one of the most famous teams in Europe, certainly with the world's best player in the lineup. So this is a really significant night for them. They've not just won. They've scored 4 goals. They've really eviscerated PSG at St James's Park. It sounded like a wonderful atmosphere. So yeah, this feels like a really big night. Of course, there's another element to it too. The Middle Eastern ownerships of both clubs. I mean, don't underestimate that. That's very important. And clearly, for those who work for Newcastle United, Eddie Howe and his staff, they'll know just how much the Saudi PIF fund that owns the club wanted to win this game against their Gulf neighbours, Qatar. So very significant, and I think just basically a great football match, a really, really exciting game, and a great win for Newcastle.
David, Sam mentioned Eddie Howe there. 3 Premier League defeats earlier on this season seemed like a long way away, but at the time there was quite a bit of pressure, wasn't there, on Eddie Howe, particularly from the outside, maybe not so much from within Newcastle and their fan base. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think you've nailed that. I didn't sense any pressure towards him from Newcastle supporters or anybody I spoke to at the club. I think there was a bit of external consternation, but it was undeserved because what Eddie Howe has done there has been absolutely magnificent, irrespective of the new ownership and the funds that they've ploughed into the club. The sort of sense of togetherness that he's engendered, the way he's brought great performances out of existing players and integrated new players, taking them to new levels, reunited the fan base with the players, with the club. And any kind of scrutiny on his position was not reflecting what the hierarchy were feeling. They were squarely behind him, and they'll hope to be for the foreseeable future. They got themselves back on track domestically. They got that draw in the San Siro. They've now got this fantastic result tonight, which was well deserved, by the way, even though they had to dig in the second half. And now they can look forward to a doubleheader against Borussia Dortmund that they'll be pretty optimistic about. And yeah, times couldn't be much better on Tyneside. And when you look at the way the club's building, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch with their different appointments, their structure, it's an amazing time to be a Newcastle United fan.
Yeah, Sam, I just want to pick up on something that David said there about the performances that Eddie Howe is getting out of the existing players that were there when he arrived. If you look at the 4 goal scorers, you've got Almiron, Byrne, Longstaff and Cher. In Almiron, Longstaff and Cher, these were players that were struggling and fighting relegation under Steve Bruce. Is this testament to the job that Eddie Howe's done, that he's bringing players like these guys to the fore and bringing out performances like this?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think he was probably not the first choice. Well, I think we know he wasn't the first choice for the consortium that bought Newcastle. Clearly, they went very hard for Unai Emery. Eddie Howe had almost joined Celtic and had decided at the last minute not to do that. I think there was always a little bit of scepticism, as there is about a lot of young English coaches that have to fight their way up through the Football League. But Eddie Howe really has proved everyone wrong. I mean, I was just looking over the career of Fabien Schär, who scored that wonderful final goal, and he was relegated with Deportivo before the season before he joined Newcastle. He came from Spain, and he's been there. I think he joined 2018. Clearly, he was a player that at the time suited their budget when Newcastle were cutting their cloth accordingly under the Ashley regime. And the wonderful thing about Howe, I think, is that he's brought these players on, a lot of those three goal scorers that we've discussed, and he's clearly a manager who believes he can improve them, and that's much to his credit.
I just want to refer you to the back page of the Times as well, David. Killian Who is the headline there. Is this result more about Newcastle's strengths or PSG's weaknesses, or have you seen a combination of both this evening?
Yeah, a bit of both. We're starting to get used to this sort of PSG performance on the biggest stage, and especially when they've come to England. You saw it at Anfield as well when they had that famous front three in their side. That's now disbanded, but any notion that there was a problem involving Messi and Neymar, it seems to continue. They don't quite rise to the challenge, and they had that chance early on through Ousmane Dembele, a top player, and we're not doubting the caliber and some young players in that side. Also, this is a PSG that's trying to regenerate, buying youthful players, bringing some through, reconnecting with the French nationality in that squad too, and trying to change the attitude, move away from these sort of star names a little bit. But Newcastle just sort of outplayed them on the whole. We've got used to them pressing and the intensity that they bring to the fore under Eddie Howe. And I think it was a sort of encapsulation of what we've seen from both sides in recent times. And the most remarkable thing is, although it was Newcastle's record victory in the Champions League of all time, it wasn't a massive surprise. It was in keeping with the trajectory that they're on under this new ownership. Now, there's been lots of justifiable questions about the new ownership and the Saudi Arabia link, but you can't fault the way in which Newcastle are moving, and that's right from the top, and it goes through the structure, and it's a very settled place at the moment. Now, there's still a lot of work to be done to make them a consistent presence, but equally, PSG are experiencing the fact that, you know, they need to be a settled club in their own right. They need to sort of restructure properly and build a really sort of together unit. And when I see them play on these biggest stages, they still don't seem to be that, whereas Newcastle definitely are.
A page of the Mirror there, Sam. Tune in for the kill with a play on the word kill with KYL, referring to Kylian Mbappe. I think last season when they qualified for the Champions League, they of course reached the League Cup final as well. The talk was that they were ahead of schedule. What would constitute a successful season potentially in the Premier League and in the Champions League this season for Newcastle, do you think?
Well, I think clearly Champions League qualification is going to be very, very tough. It always is in the Premier League. It gets harder and harder every year to finish in that top four. But they've set that bar very high now, and clearly that has a huge impact on a club's annual revenues. If you're going to be able to buy the sort of players that you want and comply with FP, then you need to be in that Champions League. If you have the kind of aspirations that Newcastle have, it's, you know, it can be worth around certainly at least 60 million for the group stages. So very important, I think, that they're in it. Clearly, the club would love to win a trophy. I mean, you saw that with the League Cup final. It's been a hell of a long time. That would be a huge success, but it's hard. It's very hard. It's hard in English football to win one of those three trophies, and it's. But I think top four, a cup run, and feel that there's progress.